Ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for joining me this afternoon on this presentation. The heading has been abbreviated a bit, but it is about remuneration decisions using a transparent and effective process. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Peter McCleary, and I'm part of the HR Coach Australasia network. HR Coach Australasia, we have about 130 of us spread around the nation, delivering HR consulting services to small, medium and large businesses. And this is an area that is probably more applicable for those who are in the medium to large space, this presentation today. Although it also works in small, up between about 50 employees and more, this is a pretty good solution if you've got issues around remuneration in organisations that might be your clients or your own. Let's get going. It'll take us about 20-25 minutes to go through today. If you've got questions, please type them in and I will try to spot them. If you've ever done a webinar, it's a bit of a challenge because there's a tiny little box in the top right corner that I have to watch while also trying to present the webinar. If I miss it, I apologise. I will get to it before we finish today. But we're rolling now and we have many people on. You'll all be muted automatically, and just type questions in. If you can't hear anything or you need something or something goes wrong, put your hand up. That would be great. Let's go. Oh, don't you love it? I push the button to go and we don't go. Okay, here's hopefully these are some of the reasons you're even on this webinar today, because these are issues that come from clients of ours consistently. And that is, clients are trying to resolve internal equity and remuneration. So what happens in organisations, there will always be one or two or five people that everyone thinks are overpaid for the job they do, and everyone uses them as a benchmark for their claim for more pay. We've all had it. Every organisation has it. And if you haven't experienced that, it's still to come your way. It's coming. Don't think it won't happen for you. Even how to then identify internal remuneration anomalies or remuneration anomalies between what you're paying and what the market expects. Equally important, because you've got to get the pay right. We know that pay is about number 4 on the scale. If you've got a highly engaged and aligned workforce, people are respected and valued for the work they do, and people see opportunities to grow in their roles, pay comes number 4. But if your pay is way out of whack with the market, then pay moves to number 1. And so it's really important that you, if you are advising clients or you are the HR person, can be hand on heart, be confident that you don't have remuneration anomalies and that you can justify whatever you're doing. Part of that challenge now is you might think you've got it right, but then you've got to ensure there's some transparency, ownership and acceptance of the remuneration decisions or the guidance that you're making. And that's another challenge, because sometimes decisions are made around REM that are difficult to justify. And they might be personal, they might be professional, they might be all sorts of other things. And you just need to, we all think that REM in organisations is silent. People don't talk about it. No matter what we put in contracts, it keeps surfacing. So you need to know that whatever you're doing has to pass the test of that it's transparent, it's valid, it's reasonable, because it will come out. If you're losing key staff because of REM issues, that's another one. You want to be able to defend that. Now, some people leave and they say, because I can get more money. That might be so, but they're probably leaving for other reasons as well. And then the money is just the icing on the cake for them to go. Alternatively, if you're losing a lot of people and it's because of money, then you really do have to sort out what is happening in this market and how can I argue our position on this one or defend our position, or what do I need to change in our position so it's defendable and works. Also, we work with organisations that are multi-sited, multi-departments, multi-everything. And so we do know that we end up with remuneration differences between locations. Often it's because of the particular leader in a particular department driving particular outcomes in terms of REM. And finally, in all of this, we seem to often overlook, does our remuneration strategy actually match the needs of our business, and is it aligned with the strategy of our business? And so very few organisations get this bit right. Okay? So lots of questions. I'm sure you've had all sorts of examples thrown at you over time. We're not going to go through all those examples, except to say when we were continually confronted with these issues coming at us, we had to find a solution. Now, you know, when we look at, if you come from the large end of town, and I've been there before, we looked at Mercer, and Mercer will do a job evaluation slot for you for about $1,000 a slot, and it will define what your pay rates need to be without you actually really knowing the basis to those numbers. Hay's a bit cheaper. You could probably do it at about $500 a position. But that too you'll never get the actual pay data behind the scenes to understand whether Hay have got it right. But they will be using some job evaluation as part of that. So what we were looking for was a solution that actually gave us both job evaluation and the pay numbers, if we could use those numbers from any salary survey, so then we could genuinely hold a line to a client in terms of their salary lines, what the market forces are, and help them make decisions around their ranges of pay. Really, that's what we were doing in terms of trying to find a solution. So let's start working through what we're ultimately trying to do is find, you know, clients were demanding what's the right REM for the right people at the right time in the right location, and how do we get there, and how do we make certain everyone owns it, so we're not fighting all the time with what we do. That's what we were wrestling with, and we had to find a solution. So we found this solution called JG Plus, and it's a job evaluation approach that includes both process and technology. We'll show you a bit of the process today. We won't worry about the technology. Ultimately, the job evaluation process allows you to evaluate the relative job size for all positions. So it's not just white collar. It's not just the high end of town. It's everyone in your organisation, from blue collar to white collar, which we know there is no other system in the market that can do that. It also, once we've done that, once we've evaluated relative job size of roles, we can, when we select a appropriate salary survey data, we can overlay job size and salary and allow a comparison in terms of relativity. So we can see, it can start to define what sort of pay we pay for particular jobs, or the size of a job, the impact a job has on a business. And when you do those steps, when you do the job size for all positions, and you get the right salary data going into the same model, you can easily defend your remuneration management strategy, because you can identify the pay anomalies, and you've got a transparent, effective, open way to establish, maintain, and review pay for everyone. That's the approach that we now use. Two-stage process in terms of the job evaluation itself. We actually train managers and even employees on the tool, and they complete the assessments. So they complete the draft assessments, and then a consultant or a HR manager and CEO or other senior execs do a reality check on those evaluations. So in terms of transparency, people own the results because they've been involved in even sizing their own roles. Because if it's not too complex, there's no reason why employees and managers can't do this. And it's a fast and robust process because it's actually online, although often employees and managers will be doing it in a paper form that the consultant or even a HR manager could be uploading that data into the system to then see how what that produces. And what we found in small and mediums, this last bit, is we don't require written job descriptions. We're trying to define a job in terms of the limits of its role, rather than looking at a job description that might be 1 week old or 10 years old and trying to assess a role. And we're doing that with the employee who's in the role or the supervisor of the role. So rather than needing job descriptions, we just need people who know the job. And this system will help us crystallise what's the significance of this role in comparison with every other role in the organisation. So the cross-section of people with an understanding of the role is more important than a PD. Because, and I think the key there is, and it's what we wrestled with for a long time, if people have a job title, and many of you will come from an HR background, so we'll call it HR manager. There have been times when I was a HR manager where the roles were very different to what you would expect a HR manager would do. In my most extreme example, I was a HR manager and I also looked after purchasing, supply, logistics, corporate affairs, and it was an ASX listed business. I mean, these are bizarre things, yet I was called HR manager. So if we, at least in this process where you're not relying on a job description that can then marry across to other similar roles in the market, you're just defining the role that the person's in using this process, then it doesn't really matter what their title is. It matters about what the extremes are coming out in terms of their scoring and their assessments on a whole heap of other factors. So let's have a look at some of those. Here's a simple picture. It says there are 10 factors. You select a word description that makes sense, and it flows through in terms of points per role. So simple concept. The challenge is getting the factors relevant. And so let's spend a bit of time on this one. Left-hand column, hope you can read it. It talks about manual to professional. And this is where this piece of work in this solution is unique in the market, where you can assess blue collar and even low-end professionals on a completely different system to white collar and still end up with the same scoring numbers. So if we look at a blue collar type roles or non-professional roles, including non-management roles, including professionals, we're going to be asking or trying to assess the use of their knowledge and what the equivalent learning would be of their knowledge. So they may not have a piece of paper, but what would that equivalent level of knowledge need to be if we were going to the market to try and replace that person's role? So equivalent learning. Self-management and the extent of their decision-making or challenges in the workplace. Every role has it. Are we micromanaged to the nth degree, or do we have some flexibility? And what's the extent of our decision-making? Are we required to have good interpersonal skills? And do we sell or not sell? Are we only internally servicing clients, or do we actually service external clients? Do we have responsibility for assets and quality? And do we have thinking challenges? And at what level are we required to think or bring our brain to work every day? And finally, we even get bonus points in this particular assessment process if we've got physical exertion or there is a really demanding, unsafe work environment. You'll get extra points for that. You'll get very few points in work environment where you are working in an air-conditioned, climate-controlled office or by yourself, for example. That's on the blue collar or the non-management professionals. And very much acceptance of this, because finally we've got an assessment process that recognises both physical and thinking demands of blue-collar people in an organisation. Conversely, let's have a look at what happens about those sitting in the professional through to executive or manager. We're worrying about their use of knowledge and their equivalent education or training or experience. No, the words are different, but not much difference in grid one. in terms of what you're trying to get to. Grid 2 changes a bit. How much decision making are they required to make in their role, and what's the level of complexity of that decision making? When we look at Grid 3, same sort of stuff, communication and sales. And then it's about whether it's in a team-based environment or individual. We look at Grid 4 around resources, span of control, and how many people, direct and indirect, actually report to this person. Because what we do know is the greater the number of locations you're looking after, the greater number of staff that ultimately feed to this any role, the greater the challenge of the role. So we pick that up around numbers of, heads count and number of locations count. Finally, in Grid 5, rather than physical exertion or work environment, which we do from manual to professional, we worry about the organisational level and the level of accountability or decision or accountability in terms of either strategy, tactics, or operational focus. And the organisational level is the closer we are to the head of the organisation, it's almost like a reverse tsunami, or it's like a tsunami. The closer you are to the centre of the universe, the bigger the impact if things go badly or well. So that's the nature of the two grids or the two sets of grid questions to try and understand a person's role rather than their PD. And it allows us to compare all the roles in an organisation against a set of parameters that work. If we pick an example, this is just one example of 20, just to show you, this is a word picture, left-hand side of use of knowledge by someone in the manual to professional workspace, and on the right-hand side, their equivalent learning. And you're simply picking, you could pick a 3-5 or a 5-7. That doesn't mean it's 5 points plus 7 points. It's just against this grid pattern, a 5 and a 7, it goes into a computer model, and that ultimately feeds through to points. But we're just using word pictures like this to help people define the limits of their role, which is why they can do it themselves. Once we get that, once we've completed across the 10 factors, we can start to plot trend lines. Once we can plot trend lines, we can start to set policy around pay. And we can import and export from other systems in terms of pay stuff. And one of the challenges in this space, if you've ever been here, is making certain you've got an apple equaling an apple even inside the organisation in terms of how they cost benefits. Because if people have been around for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, very different benefit packages and often been silently costed in or not costed at all. If we get the dollar assessments right, and that's really off current rem, once we agree on what that is, what components that should include, it should include at least salary, super, a motor vehicle at some cost if you've got vehicles, and even bonuses at the very minimum, then when you size someone's job on the horizontal scale and you overlay it with the dollars that you're currently paying within an organisation, you can get pictures like this first time around. This is a very normal picture where the people in the yellow dots are pretty close to a trend line that represents the organisation across everyone's contribution or everyone's job size plus salary. So that's the line of best fit across this business. The boxes that are drawn in on this example are plus and minus 20%. So then we can start to see when we do that against the trend line for an organisation that we've got a number of people who are being paid well above their job size and above 20% of the line of best fit. And we also have quite a few people below the line or below the boxes. Now, what this means is the ones above the line are either being significantly overpaid for the job they do, or their role over time has been contracted. Their PD may not have changed, but over time their role has contracted. We've left their pay the way it was. And the guys below the line or below the boxes are being significantly underpaid for the roles that they're now doing, and they themselves, their roles might have expanded over time because of their performance, but the pay has not chased that, has not gone with it. Now, you're not at risk of losing the people above the boxes. They are being very well paid for the work they do. You are at risk of losing the people below. And that's the challenge when you do something like this. It will flush out this stuff. And you need to have a strategy about what are we going to do with that? Now that we've got a transparent, open process, what are we going to do with the anomalies? And often, if it's below the line stuff, outside the boxes, you're going to take time and move them inside the boxes. If they're above the line and above the boxes, they are roles that you're going to have to sit down with them and talk to them about either expanding their role so they move to the next job size for what they're already being paid for, or freezing their pay until the salary line catches up to them, or making them redundant because they're overpaid for the role they're doing. And all of those conversations occur when you start to plot it like this. It's impossible not to. Just to add some complexity to all this, in this case, if I go back, that pay line of best fit for this organisation is actually the pay line we see here, yet you overlay it with different survey data, external market data, just to see how this company is going against external market data as well. And what you can see on this particular, the conclusion you draw from this one is that at the low end of salaries, they pay much less than the market, and at the high end of salaries, they pay above the market, just so you know. So this is where external market data is really useful to overlay against your own pay line, and companies need to work out which pay line are we going to be on. And if you've ever done salary survey stuff, there'll be stuff around a lower quartile, median, upper quartile, and businesses and organisations have to work out which quartile are we going to play in. Are we an LQ business? Are we a median, or are we a UQ business? And it really comes back to the level of intellect you need in your business and the market forces. We also know that different company sizes, and you'll see it in data coming out of places like AIM, the salary lines will be very different if it's a small business versus medium versus large. So you've also got to select data that's relevant to your industry and your size of business, because we know the market, the data in the market differentiates on these points. Job grading workshop, it's very simple. This is how transparent it is. If people complete their assessments, they just complete a chart, they put the points or the grades in that they've decided for their role, and then that's uploaded to a system. It's very easy to walk someone through. Let's sorry, we're getting towards the time on this, I just noticed. So let's look at this. In terms of following up, many of you have come on because coaches have said, why don't you go to this webinar if you're interested? So talk to them. Or if you need to talk to us, there's our HR Coach number, and my name's Peter McCleary, and I'm at Peter at HR Coach. That's the rush job before we go to questions. I know there's always questions in this, but maybe people will be too, and we've got quite a few people on. If you've got questions, the question should be, I hope, around, this is what happens when we often first job evaluate and get the REM right on any organisation. And that's the mess that every organisation lives with until they do something like this. And then they have a few decisions to make as to where they're going to be parking their organisation in the long term to stay competitive in the market. And then they've got to have a simple, and that's more external data, and then they've got a simple word-based, document process to start to get people involved, do their assessments, and then start to plot this stuff. So it's really hard in organisations to make decisions about REM and the correctness or otherwise if you don't have pictures like this coming through in terms of your data. Now, I'm up to questions. Now, if you'd like to type any questions in, that would be good, and I will unmute you if the question throws me. So please let me know if you've got any questions. It's been fast and furious overview in 25 minutes. around job evaluation, salary survey data, getting it right for your own organisation. Now that is really encouraging that with all these people on, no questions. So thanks for participating today. Hope you're in for a good week. And if you've got any questions in the future, just let your HR Coach Network member know, or just contact us. Look forward to talking with you if you ring it in. But otherwise, thanks for participating today, and I hope that has helped. Thank you.